What if everything you've been taught about creating the life you desire is backwards? What if your struggle isn't because of lack of hard work, intelligence, or even opportunities, but because you're trying to create reality from the wrong end? Most people believe the sequence looks like this. Get money, then feel wealthy. Find success, then feel confident. Create better circumstances, then become happy. In this documentary, you will realize why that sequence is completely reversed. And this single realization could change how you think about wealth, success, and your entire reality. This masterpiece introduces one of the most important ideas about your entire existence. An idea so simple that many people overlook it, yet so powerful that understanding it changes the way you approach creating the reality you desire. The idea is this: your state of being is the foundation from which every other thing in your reality emerges from. Not the way you think, speak, or act, but your state of being. And until you understand this, you may spend years trying to change effects while completely ignoring the cause. Creating your reality follows a specific sequence. Your state of being causes your thinking. Thinking causes speaking. Speaking causes action. Action creates the system through which physical experiences appear. Pay attention to that. This means your thoughts do not create your state of being. Your state creates your thoughts. Think about happiness. When you're genuinely happy, do you sit down and force yourself to think happy thoughts? Of course not. Happy thoughts arise naturally. They are a consequence of being happy. The state comes first. The thoughts follow. Your state of being is the first cause, the source from which everything else emerges. Now here's where things become interesting. Most people spend their lives trying to create reality from the outside in. They look at their bank account, then decide whether they feel wealthy. They look at their circumstances, then decide whether they feel successful. They look at their relationships, then decide whether they feel worthy. In other words, they allow effects to determine causes. This is like looking at a reflection in a mirror and trying to change the reflection without changing what's standing in front of it. The reflection isn't the source, it's the result. And yet most people spend their entire lives fighting with reflections. Imagine someone looks at their financial situation and sees very little money. Immediately, they conclude, "I am broke." Then what happens? They begin thinking, speaking, acting, and making decisions from the perspective of a broke person. And eventually they create more evidence to support that perspective. Not because the bank account caused reality, but because they allowed the physical result to define their state of being. They allowed the effect to become the cause. And that sequence short-circuits the entire creative process. Here's the most radical lesson of this documentary. If you want wealth, stop trying to get wealth. Be wealthy. At first, that sounds strange, maybe even impossible. But think about happiness again. There are moments in life when you've simply decided, "I'm not going to let this bother me anymore." And suddenly something changes. Not outside, inside. You decide to be happy, to stop negotiating with your circumstances, to stop waiting for permission. You choose a new state. Wealth works the same way. Before wealth can become an experience, it must first become a state of being. Your reality begins shifting the moment your state shifts. Not when the money, opportunities, or circumstances arrives, when your state of being changes. The wealthy, successful, confident, and abundant version of you already exists. Your task is not to create that version. Your task is to become conscious of it, to occupy, be, and embody that state. This is the fastest method to create your desired reality because it changes the source rather than manipulating the effects. Let's discuss the mind for a while. Thinking is useful, but thinking is not primary. Many people decide to be something and then immediately begin questioning it. Am I really wealthy? What if this doesn't work? What about my current circumstances? What about my bills? What about the evidence? That is exactly where delay begins. Because the moment you start arguing with your chosen state, you weaken it. You introduce doubt, and that returns your attention to the effects instead of the cause. then you stop being and start worrying. Here's another major lesson in this documentary. Your state of being only exists now. Not tomorrow, not next year, not after success arrives. Now. You can remember the past. You can imagine the future. But you can only be in this moment, which is why presence, awareness, observation, and living in the now is not negotiable. Because creation does not happen in some future moment. Creation begins in the state you occupy right now. This powerful message is not about money. Money is simply an example. The deeper lesson is about identity, about who you are being, because success is not something you chase. It is something you attract through the person you become, not through what you have, what others think of you, or your current circumstances, but through your state of being. So if there is one lesson to take from this message, it is this. Stop asking, how do I get wealth? And start asking, who am I being? Creation begins long before action, long before results and physical reality. It begins in your state of being, and when the cause changes, the effects eventually have no choice but to follow. If you enjoyed this exploration, hit the subscribe button as we continue uncovering the deeper principles behind wealth, consciousness, and creation.